The crypto year 2024 is coming to an end, and the big question now is how will 2025 be for us as crypto investors? And are we looking at indicators that are signaling major bullish development, or are we going to expect more downside, a bigger pullback? Let's talk about it here. So, hey everyone, it's a Patient Hodler coming at you with another market update. Where are we in the cycle video? And if you enjoyed these very quick updates, then please smash up the like button right now. Let me know through the likes if you enjoyed this type of content. And also let me know in the comments below what you think is going to happen in 2025. So for all of you who are already in the new year, Happy New Year. For everyone else, I hope you have very nice and safe celebrations of that new year. So we're here looking at the 4-hourly of Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is right now breaking out after forming some sort here of a bullish divergence, lower prices in the chart and higher highs, higher lows in the RSI. Now here a little bit of a breakout, but unconfirmed yet. Just basically breaking out of the trend line that is forming since 17th of December, and the reason for that could very well be that the people that are already in the new year, for them they can already buy and everything what their actions are taxed in the new year already, right? So everyone who is passing through that midnight mark where the new year begins can already sit back on the computer and buy stuff for 2025. So that could be one reason, and the other one is obviously that maybe there's some bullish excitement, but we will see a little bit later here in these indicators that this is not the guaranteed turnaround and we're going to all-time highs. It could very well be that we're just faking out and go to a little bit more downside before we continue our rally. But let's look at first at the monthly chart here, which gives us way more clues. And in the price action you can't see much because of all the lines that I have here, but that is not that important right now. So if you can see, we are about to close the year at around 95,000, maybe 94,000. Maybe we will have a little bit more pump right here for me, right? For others it already closed, but the yearly candle overall will only close in 10.5 hours from making this video. And if we see we are at 95,000, we can also look where we were in the end of the last year, beginning of that year that we are closing right now, and we have been around 43,000 that year, right? So we have more than doubled since then. That is not a bad performance, right? Especially for those who have a very Bitcoin heavy portfolio, that's a pretty good performance, right? So what's important now? What do the indicators tell us? And a lot of people got mad at me when I showed them the TSI, the total strength indicator, that has marked the peak of every cycle here, like this pre-peak. So many people say this was the real top and this indicator doesn't, but all the indicators, like also the RSI, show that this was the real peak, and inflation purified, this wasn't even higher, right? So we can still discuss and argue about it, it should be debated, but so far the TSI has been very accurate, so I think it is worth including the TSI into an analysis. Doesn't mean that when the TSI touches this line that we solely based on that take our decisions, but we should at least include it, right? So the TSI did not touch the upper trend line, hence I expect more upside. The TSI though is still on track with a projection of forming such a pre-top in February already 2025, depending on the velocity, if we continue to pump like that. Already I said in the other videos that on a pullback this might change, right? So there could be a bigger pullback, and then the TSI will look a little bit differently. Now enough with the TSI, let's look a little bit at the RSI. Every cycle we have been touching there and thereabout this slightly downward sloping upper resistance of the RSI, right? That in the last cycle it did hit 92, so it's expected for this cycle to hit close to 90, maybe not even 90. We are far away from that from the RSI perspective. So again, more upside expected, right? And it can take way longer than February, depending on the price development that we're going to see in the next months of that year. we're looking at more indicators. But first of all, let's look at this here, right? So in every cycle, we basically had a very explosive move in the change of the year, right? So 16 to 17, in 2017 we made the majority of the gains. 20 to 21, in 21 the majority of the gains, right? And now we're here 2024 and we're going into the second stage of the bull. The majority of the gains are coming in 2025, very likely, right? So a very explosive move is to be expected. Now Bitcoin is dominating in that previous phase, but we already see here for the altcoins a projection that we have lost this mega rising wedge, and we have bearishly retested it, which is a good thing, right? It's just called bearish retest, but we've retested it here, and we're expecting a fall to the downside. But that doesn't mean that we are falling right away. That could also mean that we are going to hover a little bit more here around without faking out and going up more, right? But we could start trickle down, we could fall hard, we don't know. That's just guesswork, right? There could be a pullback out of Bitcoin, and still this dominance could stay at the same place as altcoins also bleed, or even bleed harder. It could go a little bit higher. Reason for that being is there is a CME gap open at 78,000 to 81,000. So some people expect a pullback into that range to close. As you know that 90% of all CME gaps get closed at some point. Now here's one thing with the CME gap. Let me go into the weekly and show you something. So we have CME gaps that stay open a long time. For example, this CME gap, everyone, I remember this, in these collapses, Terra Luna, expected the price to come back to 34,000, and it even tried, you see the wicks here, but it was only after all of that bear market that it finally closed the CME gap here, right? The same thing happened in the last bull run. People expected a pullback into the range after this massive pump here up to 42,000. People expected a pullback down to 24,000, this CME gap that is marked here, but it was only until totally after the entire bull run that the CME gap was finally closed in the next bear market. So it's not guaranteed that you get a good entry and a good pullback here, as we could just fire along, rise massively, and in the next bear market we could close the CME gap at 78,000, which would make absolute sense, because look at where we went to in this bear market, right? You look at the previous high at around 20,000, we came down all the way to 15,000. Now our previous highs were 64, 69,000, depending on which one you want to take as the real high. So it wouldn't be unreasonable for us to drop back into that range of 60,000 after pumping to 150 or 180,000. It's absolutely possible, and it would permit us to close the CME gap. So the rise of Bitcoin can still happen without the pullback in closing the CME gap, and would once again trick everyone who is waiting with the longs at the CME gap. But as we see also in many other examples, the CME gap gets closed right away with a big fat pullback, and so that is not out of the cards. But the beginning of the year could be as bullish after this pullback already. Pullbacks are more shallow right now. It could be very bullish, and we could go to the upside. A little bit of a head scratch though is the DXY, right? We are in this bull market with the DXY that has taken out these highs here at least, and is now at a very critical point. The DXY is always favorable for Bitcoin and crypto in general, and risk on assets when the DXY is going down. Now Trump is going to take office, certainty will enter the market, and very likely dollars will be converted into more risky assets. Like a more risky asset than holding currency is what almost every other asset except gold and stuff like that, right? So buying stocks, buying Bitcoin, buying real estate and so on, all that is basically a move into risk asset. You buy an apartment, you exchange dollars for the apartment, right? So you basically, by moving into assets, you devalue the dollar as you're moving out of the dollar automatically when you're purchasing something, right? At the same time, this is a basket. The DXY is a basket measured against other currencies. So the valuation is against other currencies, as other currencies are also weakening. You see the European central banks cutting rates, other countries printing money, the economy not so good, so people are moving out of the euro as they fear that the eurozone is doing very poorly at the moment, and so on. So that automatically values the dollar against the other currency. But once there is economical positive expectation towards the US, and the US itself and everyone who's holding dollars might be moving into the assets instead of the fleeing into the currency, we could see a turnaround. But I'm not a prophet, not an oracle. It's just a head scratcher that I want to highlight here for you, that this DXY is going so high. As we have seen, these were the other two bull markets that we had here, right? These two, a clear drawdown of the DXY until it formed a double bottom here in the last one, right? So very strange behavior of the DXY here, and we will see if the downwards trend will continue here on a more macro scale. So this remains to be seen. You see that when the DXY turns around, really goes ham, that was the end of the bull run. So we don't want the end of the bull run here, right? So we don't want to have this as a mega bottom pattern and then turn around, break out, and go into a massive crash already, which isn't indicated by major indicators, right? So let's look at the pi cycle top indicator here, and you see these lines basically up here. Whenever these two EMAs, these two moving averages are crossing, that is where the top really happened, right? So also this one was, by the way, the pi cycle indicator also calling the first top here in the cycle, not the second. And we see that it called it here around December. Here it was around April, right? And here in the previous ones there was one on in end of 2013 and one on in April 13. What we can see is that if you have these two tops and you compare these two tops, right? You have two major tops basically on you have one major top in the first year part of the year and a major top in the second part of the year, right? Here obviously it wouldn't have been so good to sell here, but it was very early, right? And then you have a cycle that looks more like this. The big question is, will our cycle look more like this? In any case though, as long as these two lines, these two moving averages of the pi cycle indicator are far away from each other, we're nowhere near the top. You see though that the harder you pump, the faster they are converging. So you could see a massive pump, for example, to 150k, suddenly they would be very, very close to each other, right? So it's crucial that we are monitoring these indicators. Another one is the stock to flow. Now the stock to flow, we need to be a little bit careful with that, because the stock to flow is projecting like a million or so in this cycle, right? And the stock to flow has been readjusted already to fit this cycle, because I remember in the last cycle the stock to flow was implying 150,000 or something like that, and it fell more than 50% short. So really not something to rely on. But also the stock to flow in general is far away from where it should be. So we can include that into the possibility of us going higher. Now, one of the most important for me is the market overvaluation. So we have the MVRVZ score here. And as you see, in any top, even like local top, in every top scenario, the MVRVZ score is starting to go parabolic. This is the orange line, and the Bitcoin price action is here, the black line, and is even going into that red territory, right? The red zone here is the overvaluation, so to say, in comparison to the rest of the market, whereas the green zone of the MVRVZ score is basically a buy signal. Now we see that the last run fell a little bit short, but also touched this red zone. Now, right now, we are so far away from this red zone, we aren't even remotely, because it almost makes you question if we are in a bull market, right? Look at this level here. We weren't even in a bull market. This level here, we were in a bull, but very pre-bull stage. So what we are seeing is we could see something like in the 2017 to 18 cycle. And I'm definitely waiting for such a such an explosive move to the upside that gets at least close to this red zone. So I would say we're also not close yet. Overall, what we're seeing is that MicroStrategy is buying hundreds of millions of Bitcoin, which at this point in time is so much Bitcoin. They have 450,000 almost Bitcoin, that it makes you worry what happens if they at some point break, get liquidated or something like that, have to sell their Bitcoin, which I don't think they have to right now, but we don't know what happens in a bear market, right? If they turn into something like a catalyst to the downside, we don't know, right? But right now they are buying. They are limiting the Bitcoin supply, so the Bitcoin supply shock is coming. Tether also buying 705 million Bitcoin for their reserves. Tether also suspected to be one of the things in risk, which I cannot ultimately judge because I don't know all the facts, but I know they have a lot of government debt bought basically of the US. And a lot of publicly traded companies like Metaplanet and so on are also massively accumulating Bitcoin, as well as countries like El Salvador and Bhutan and other countries that are mining, BRICS countries. Countries are permitting Bitcoin transactions. There are tax laws being made, Bitcoin being recognized as legal tender, Bitcoin being adopted by banks, for example, here in Brazil, also offered to their clients. So there's a lot of Bitcoin adoption going on in general, which overall makes it really bullish for Bitcoin in the long run. Now, let's look at the crypto market cap in general, right? And compare it just to the last time when we were going into a bull run. And we really see this here. We have been forming our bear market. We have crossed the previous all-time high candle close and broken out and retested bullishly. That is that zone. Now we are right at this spot. A retest down to this level would even coincide with closing the CME gap, but doesn't have to happen, right? We can just see a massive God candle continuation here, and we see after this break we were continuing for 1, 2, 3, 4 to 5 months, continuing the uptrend, right? If you calculate this break here as 1, we have already been 2. There could be 3 to 4 more months, right? How could it look? Well, we could just take this breakout, put it on top of here, right, this breakout, and then say, okay, that's how it looks, right? What would that be? $10 trillion total crypto market cap. Would it be unreasonable? I don't think so. With all the trillions that are being printed and so on, I don't think so. Also here, total crypto market cap, we have this downward sloping RSI line. We're nowhere close to that if we consider these touches here, right? So that would be an RSI right now of 86 or something like that in the total market cap, where this trend line should come into play and react. We don't see us close here. We are at 70, which is just barely bull territory, right? So that is looking very good. Let's take a final look at our old prediction of the cup and handle pattern, right? So we had this cup and handle. We have a measured move of this cup and handle of 120,000, right, for Bitcoin. So we have come close with 107k, but we didn't hit this target just yet. And this is only one target, and you get this target if you are measuring it from the non-logarithmic, right? So on the non-logarithmic chart, taking that as the breakout target here, you get the target. You get this. Actually, you get the target that is a little bit higher, a little bit above 120k. And yeah, so we are still looking for upside also from this breakout target, right? But this cup and handle so far played out beautifully, and I know it feels different, but we can't really ignore that. Since we have broken out here, we had another 30% upside, and we went to 107,000 in a very quick time. And overall, if you calculate Bitcoin as an investment from the bear market bottom to the high that we have formed right now, you can see that we have been up 570%. Where in the markets do you get that over the course of roughly 2.5 years? Nowhere. So Bitcoin is the best performing asset. Bitcoin is outperforming Nasdaq, S&P 500, everything else, right? I'm extremely bullish on Bitcoin, and yeah, I think we will go higher based on what we've seen. Although we need to keep in mind that some indicators show that we might be closer to an end, or at least an end of the massive returns, right? For altcoins, not so much. For altcoins, the big returns, they will still come. Hopefully they come in Q1. And 2025 will be the year where we have to take profit, right? I think there's no point to look at beyond 2025 right now. 2025 really needs to be the year where we lock in major profits, where we create a cash pile to take advantage of the next bear market bottom to do 300, 400% on Bitcoin and 10 and 20x's on altcoins once again. I don't think this will be the last cycle, as some people say. I don't think that this will turn into a super cycle, as people say, as the underlying factor, in my opinion, still is global liquidity. And in 2025, when after Trump takes office, after things have settled in the world, I think there will be major global liquidity expansion, which will drive Bitcoin and crypto in 2025. But so far, so good. To each and every one who is already going into the new year, a happy new year. To each and every one that is going into the new year, happy new year celebrations. And may this year be very, very rich for you, this year 2025. Be safe out there, enjoy your celebrations, and wherever you are on the world, have yourselves a great morning, evening, day, night, or afternoon. I see you in the next one.